They say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And in the 18th century, nothing was bigger and fallen harder than the Rococo aesthetic. The iconic image of this period is defined by its colorful, maximalist style, where everything was lavish, ornate, and unapologetically decorative. From the ruffles, bows, and pastels, Rococo fashion and the lifestyle was so fun and playful. As luxurious as the style was, we also correlate it with corrupt, out-of-touch elites and tawdry decadence. There's a reason everyone from the capital in the Hunger Games looks like 18th century aristocrats. But despite its bad reputation during the end of the French monarchy, we still can't get enough of the Rococo aesthetic. How did this style emerge, and why is it still the defining image of the 18th century? We're going to look into the rise, fall, and revival of the Rococo aesthetic. So now, let's get started. Before Europe would live in the pastel world of Rococo, it was immersed in the dramatic grandeur of Baroque. Lasting from the 17th to mid-18th century, Baroque was renowned for its signature shadows and historically grounded operatic tone. A lot of Baroque paintings were literally and figuratively dark to the point of being scary. There was the famous Judith Holofernes painting, which I can't even show without censoring 90% of it. Don't look it up if you're squeamish. I can show Baroque architecture, which projected an image of power and wealth, which was exemplified by the Palace of Versailles, displaying Baroque features of scale and symmetry. The famous Hall of Mirrors reflect light from the windows, exaggerating the already spacious hallway. And style-wise, with the influence of King Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, it became standard for royals to take on a maximalist style. He commissioned over 300 formal portraits, where he was somewhat depicted as a defined mythological figure. This was an intentional political move to inspire awe and obedience, in the name to further distance royalty and commoners. After his passing in 1715, King Louis XV took his place when he was 5. The kingdom was temporarily ruled by his great-uncle, Philip II, but during this time, nobility regained a sense of freedom that was stifled during Louis XIV's reign. As royals had more freedom, art would move from palace halls to intimate salons. Rococo gained popularity around the 1730s, where the term itself was a pun on roquet, a type of decorative art. While Baroque was grand, dark, and dramatic, the basis of the Rococo style was light and focused on opulent leisure, all with a winking, airy playfulness. It was art for art's sake, which was a bold concept for the time. A style that was so carefree and proudly unserious hasn't been the main trend for a long time. Common themes of Rococo art included aristocratic relaxation, luxury, and love, or at least flirtation. You could say the most famous and referenced Rococo painting was The Happy Accidents of the Swing by Jean-Honoré Fragonard. The shoe being kicked off, especially towards a statue of Cupid, was recognized as a double entendre. Outside of paintings, another component of Rococo was emphasizing that anything man-made was a signifier of sophistication. There were some natural elements in Rococo, like lush greenery and florals, but they were filtered into highly stylized and curated lenses instead of embracing true realism. With the increase of trade from Asian countries, Chinese porcelain and Japanese lacquerware would enter palaces throughout Europe. As a result of trades, silk became the preferred fabric of the elite. Pastels are more expensive to produce on silk, which gave soft, delicate colors a sign of luxury and social standing. It was a way of saying, I don't need to work. Fashion designer Rose Burton introduced the modern concept of haute couture. Known for her association with Marie Antoinette and recognized as the most notable dressmaker and history's first celebrity stylist, Burton's designs were exported to courts across Europe, which cemented France as a fashion capital. In the midst of political turmoil, she believed that she could combat her enemies with style. Fashion has never been so maximalistic. There were several trends associated with this time, including the pouf or poif. This style was innovated by hairdresser Leonard Auty when he got jealous of Rose Burton for creating a cassicot or question mark hairstyle that became popular amongst various princesses and court. The poif hairstyle was first shown on Duchess of Chartres, but Queen Marie Antoinette would establish it as an official trend when she wore it at the coronation of her husband. Creating this hairstyle was very simple. All you needed was a thin metal frame, add pompadour false hair, put some cushions on the top, have it powdered white for extra oomph, and just a few hours later, it's good to go. But the hair alone wasn't enough of a statement. You could add basically anything to a pouf. Popular decor were pearls, jewels, small hats, feathers, ships, and that's just the stuff that was documented. It was also kind of a competition on who had the highest hair. These styles were typically around 1 to 2 feet tall, but the Duchess of Devonshire and Marie Antoinette would wear their hair up to 3 feet tall. Hairstyles in this time were so high, it was said to reach such a height that it was necessary for ladies to kneel on the carriage floor or hold the towering hairpieces outside the coach windows en route to balls and the opera. Empress Maria Theresa of Austria didn't approve of this trend, writing to her daughter Marie Antoinette, "You know that I have always been of the opinion that one should follow fashion moderately, but never carry it to excess. A pretty young queen, full of charms, has no need for all these follies. Quite the contrary. A simple hairstyle suits her better and is more appropriate for a queen. She must set the tone, and everyone will hurry to follow even your smallest errors." As for makeup, the defining look was to wear heavy white foundation and bright red or pink rouge. In some spaces, the heavier the rouge, the better. Mooches, or fake beauty marks, were also trendy. Adding one on the right cheek was a sign of marriage. The left cheek meant you were engaged. One near the mouth was seen as flirtatious, and a mooch near the eye signified that the wearer was a mistress. There was a reason mooches were so popular, and that was they were an effective way to cover up syphilis scars. Makeup was one of the most dangerous trends in this era because the white powder was made by egg whites and white lead, and if used enough, will eat away at the wearer's face. Other makeup also had the risk of mercury poison, so that's the cherry on top. Dresses were easier to manage, but not really. On top, Rococo dresses featured flowing ruffled sleeves and a square neckline with the décolletage on full display. Typical adornments were bows, frills, and delicate lace. On the bottom half, skirts became wide. In formal settings, some of these dresses would be 6 feet horizontally. This was another way of displaying wealth and social rank. You couldn't move easily wearing these, but if you're of a certain social ranking, why would you need to? Some dress designs would feature fabric on the back. This was known as robe à la française, but if you want to feel cheeky, or at least more comfortable, you can put on the robe à la polonaise, which reveals the ankles. Arguably, the Rococo trend that has aged the best were chokers. These chokers would typically be made from lace, pearls, or ribbons, and balance the low-cut silhouette by adding a focal point to the upper body. Due to its versatility, this trend would repeatedly come back even centuries later. Now, the Rococo era is often portrayed as one big party, and yeah, it basically was. The champagne and cake-fueled masquerades were one of legends. Some of these parties lasted over a day, but I can't imagine that would be too fun because soon enough, you'll have a ballroom filled with drowsy or napping guests. But this period saw the emergence of the modern definition of a socialite or a man about town. You didn't have to be born into royalty to enter certain spaces, as long as you had some sort of proximity to the higher echelon of society. These social figures were a common source of gossip, satire, and influence. They were celebrities in their own right. Some of the most well-known figures in the 18th century social scene, as well as some notable names we'd recognize today, included Giacomo Casanova. He entered the elite world by pretending to be a magician of sorts, but he's known for his presumed eventful romantic life, some of which were the most renowned names of the time. These experiences have been detailed in his autobiography, but some argue that he was just telling stories. Chevalier de Saint-Georges was known for being one of the best swordsmen in Europe, but became even more notable as a composer. It's currently sort of debated on whether or not he's a mediocre composer, and I would say, no, he's not. Get your ears checked. At this time, it was very rare for a biracial person to be as accomplished as he was. His success was a quiet defiance against the rigid social order. In the social scene, he was also known for hooking up a lot, and this would be a common theme for the 18th century elite social world. Madame de Pompadour regularly attended salons and pardoned some key figures of the Enlightenment. After being invited to a masquerade, she'd come mask to mask with King Louis XV. Just days later, she'd be his official mistress. But that's not all she was. She was asked to intervene in the negotiations that would become the Treaty of Versailles. She also played a key role in shaping the Rococo style by supporting the swing artist Francois Bouchoir, and by decorating the 15 residences of King Louis with more ornamental opulence and pastels. Her favorite color was pink, and she commissioned a bright-colored porcelain set, some of which look like Urban Outfitters trinkets, and contributed to the popularity of the color pink in the 18th century. She was also one of the most visible women to wear bouffant swept-up hair, and was named after the pompadour hairstyle. Given how influential she was, some critics believed that she represented the disillusionment of existing hierarchies. She was nonetheless a walking manifestation of Rococo ideals. Rosalie Douth was a dancer who'd later become notable for mingling with royalty. She's known today as being the first recorded person to embody the dumb blonde stereotype because she was known to pause for an extended period of time before she'd speak. It sounds more like she was thinking before she spoke, but the people around her didn't see it that way. She was the subject of parody in a one-act play that kept Paris laughing for weeks, though she didn't find it funny. Though Rosalie Douth was ridiculed in the social scene for being supposedly dumb, she was smart enough to escape the French Revolution. Today she's seen as kind of an icon, but I can't really root for her too much because she did some messy things. Dido Elizabeth Bell had an ambiguous standing in the elite social scene. She had access to luxuries, but still wasn't fully accepted into the aristocratic world in England. She often dined separately from guests and was excluded from some formal gatherings. But when she did make social appearances, she was noted for her wittiness and lively aura. She was also one of the first mixed women to be depicted in Western art, paving the way for all the others. Madame du Barry was the last official royal mistress of Louis XV. She came from humble beginnings and was shunned by quite a few royals and aristocrats as she represented one of the worst of the elite world, a social climber. In the Marie Antoinette movie, she was depicted as kind of trashy, but that wasn't a true representation of who she was. Despite her unextravagant upbringing, which contributed to her bad reputation in court, during the French Revolution, she was regarded as just another corrupt elite. She supposedly helped nobles escape from France and hoarded money, and because of these accusations, she was one of the elite social figures who was sent to the guillotine. We simply can't discuss the Rococo era without mentioning Marie Antoinette. She was arguably the most famous and iconic figure of her generation. After becoming queen at the age of 18, she was known for spending a lot of money on clothes, gambled as a hobby, and even as a queen, lived a party girl lifestyle. She and her court adopted the clothing materials Indienne, Parcelle, and muslin, creating one of the most stylish courts in history. Despite her power and influence, she was never loved by the court. For one, she was accused of maintaining close ties to her home country, Austria, was rumored to engage in adultery, and was blamed for not birthing an heir quick enough. The general public also didn't care for her for those reasons and more. She was written to live in gaudy extravagance, priding herself in her own frivolity, all while France was facing a massive financial crisis. After being told the people of her country have no bread, her solution to this problem was to let them eat cake. Only, she never said that. That quote could be attributed to Enlightenment philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau as an anecdote of a clueless princess. But it didn't matter that she never said that. Marie Antoinette symbolized everything wrong about the French regime, a self-indulgent royal who was completely out of touch with the lives of real people. She was the scapegoat for all the social and economic issues in France, when, if we're being technical, those problems would be attributed to King Louis XIV. Nonetheless, on October 16, 1793, she was sentenced to the guillotine. It seemed that a lot of violent punishments were happening to royals and anyone associated with them, so we'll take a few steps back to how this all started. Starting around the 1760s, France was burdened by heavy debt from two costly wars, the 7 Years' Wars, which France lost, and the American Revolution, which France didn't lose per se, but spent a lot of money to be involved in, and only deepened the nation's debt. Poor harvest caused food shortages, and whatever food that was available rose in price. The common people bore the brunt of taxes, while the royals paid little to none. And on top of that, they funded their extravagant parties and relaxation-filled lifestyles. Because King Louis XVI was unable to solve the nation's debt and food shortages, the public was losing faith in the monarchy. And with the Enlightenment gaining more prevalence, the concept of monarchy was being put into question. Starting around the 1780s, everything about the Rococo aesthetic was no longer aspirational. It became tacky, vulgar, and worst of all, was tired and out of style, since it was associated with the old regime. On August 10, 1792, thousands of armed revolutionaries charged the Tuileries Palace, where Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette lived. 1 month later, France was declared a republic. Whatever power and influence the royals had were gone. Both Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were imprisoned for reckless spending and treason, and later were both sent to the guillotine. An era was officially over, but a new one began. After Rococo, the neoclassical and empire styles would take its place. This style was simplistic in a sophisticated way, ethereal, and reminiscent of ancient Greece and Rome. Napoleon Bonaparte also contributed to this aesthetic, wanting to recreate the prestige of ancient Rome, and even compared himself to a modern-day Caesar. Interestingly, as hated as the Rococo aesthetic was in the late 1700s, it didn't take long before it inspired a sense of nostalgia. As early as the 1810s, there was a Rococo revival trend in decor, and during the mid-19th century, famed cabinet maker John Henry Belter used Rococo motifs in American furniture. It brought back a sense of refinement in a world of industrialization and practical, utilitarian furniture. And in France, during the reign of Emperor Napoleon III, the Second Empire style flourished as a result of economic growth. The concept of the style was to not leave a single space undecorated. Sound familiar? The revival of Rococo elements seemed to be an attempt to recapture the playful refinement during the more strict and structured Victorian era. Since the beginning of popular media in movies, TV series, music videos, Pinterest boards, Rococo imagery emphasizes luxury, whimsy, and glamour. This era laid the groundwork for many feminine styles we recognize today, including soft colors, floral patterns, bows, lace, and flowing fabrics. And since this was the last period of monarchy, Rococo is reminiscent of fairy tales, elaborate palaces, and refinement, all while still being romantic in nature. Rococo art regularly showed scenes of playful flirtation, associating this time with charm and subtle seduction with an air of grace, like being compared to a rose while in an ornate garden, or receiving a love letter which may or may not get inappropriate. Given this aesthetic's ornate embroidery and color palette, high fashion designers can't get enough of this look. We'd be here all day if I pointed out every Rococo-inspired collection. One reason for this was, as stated before, haute couture started in the 18th century. Everything we understand about fashion today originated from Rococo. High fashion also loves everything ornamentive and flashy. These type of maximalist designs provide visual storytelling and spectacle, ideal for runways, editorial shoots, and red carpet fits. The extravagance and maximalism can be used as a way to showcase personal expression and style, especially when more minimalistic or quietly luxurious styles are highly visible. While the style is recognized for its glamour and luxury, the fall of Rococo formulated the concept of displaying proud open opulence at the wrong time being tasteless. We saw something like this happen during the McBling/logomania trend of the early 2000s, where it was all about showing how much loud, flashy brands you own. But by the 2008 crash, this exact style started being seen as having no taste, as fashion was moving towards a more subdued, vintage-inspired look. And in more recent microtrends, the corset tops as outerwear in 2023 and the bloomer short style of 2025 does link back to this specific 18th century nostalgia. When we see this point of history being portrayed, it's often showed as a celebration of beauty, leisure, and the joyful pursuit of pleasure. It's not about frivolity. Embracing even a little bit of whimsy is good for morale. And that's all I have for the rise, fall, and revival of Rococo. I do have a series on the history of aesthetics where I look decade by decade at popular styles, starting in the 20th century, mostly from an American perspective. But since we're going back, why not go really far back? The last video I did was on medieval Y2K, but I also touched a bit on medieval culture in general. Today we looked at the 18th century, and if you'd like me to dive into the Victorian times in the future, you're free to let me know in the comments. But I will be doing a 1920s style analysis very soon, so be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, I do have a Patreon, where you can find exclusive short audiobooks, diary entries, and now articles on romanticizing life and my take on some hot topics that you can't find on this channel. So feel free to check it out. Thank you all for watching and hope to see you all in the next one.